All right, y'all. So today obviously is about scale. And what's fun about this topic is that it is definitely the easiest part of media buying when it comes to tactics and how difficult something is and how long it takes to do something. The scaling part of media buying is actually the easiest. But the issue, maybe not the issue, the misconception, which we'll get to here in a minute, is that, like, if I asked most of you guys when you guys filled out the intake forms for this class, most of you said that your issue was with scale, which makes sense. I mean, it could be your issue because scale is basically doing more of what's working or really growing your account. But what's funny, whenever I work with companies one-on-one or whenever I dive into your all's businesses, I realize that what's actually holding you back from scale are the fundamental things that we really covered in the first 7 weeks of this class, and the ability to repeat that process for different avatars and to come up with different hooks and to come up with new products in your business to grow your product line. Most of scale really comes down to the mastery of the process that we learned the first 7 weeks of this class. There really isn't a lot of tactical hacks or tips or tricks that you guys are missing out on when it comes to scale, other than really nailing everything that we taught in the first 7 to 8 weeks. So with media buying, scaling is actually really easy because it means that you have achieved some level of success that you are ready to scale it. That is usually where people fall off, is that they've either missed something in those core elements of a campaign. Their copy's off, their creative's off, their offers off, or they've just decided to quit. So maybe their first few test campaigns haven't worked, and they're having trouble going through the troubleshooting process like we talked about last week. Maybe they're not sure exactly what's wrong with their campaign, and they don't really make it to the point where they achieve proof of concept so that they are actually ready to scale. And that's just an interesting point that I want to make, because I think a lot of people are stuck in that part of the process. It's not really the tactical action of scaling that they're having trouble with, because that's really easy. It's actually pretty simple, and you're overlooking the importance and really how difficult nailing the campaign creation process, how difficult that can be. So when we talk about scale, there are lots of tactics that I am going to share today. I'm going to show you my process for scaling. But when you think about it, this actually is the easiest part of this process because we've gotten something to work and we're ready to do more with it. So just a different way of thinking about this than you usually hear at conferences or on podcasts. It seems like most people get stuck in the scaling phase, but really they're stuck in the proof of concept phase. So just a few misconceptions about scaling. The first is that most people assume that your return on ad spend or CPA or cost per lead, whatever that success metric is that you're measuring, that it will stay the same as you scale. So I'll work with students or clients who maybe they generated 1,000 leads or 1,000 purchases, and their cost per acquisition was $5, or their return on ad spend was a 5x return on ad spend, and things are looking really good, and they want to scale. They have the proof of concept, and they're ready to scale. So they start upping the budget, they start targeting new audiences, they start the process of scaling that we'll discuss further today. And then a week or so later, they'll say, okay, Molly, I'm up to 5,000 purchases now, but my cost per acquisition is $10, and my return on ad spend has gone down to 2.5, and this is terrible. What am I going to do? Why is this happening? And they don't realize that 99% of the time, that is how scaling works, right? That is really how these paid traffic platforms function. That the more you spend and the more that you saturate the audience that you're targeting, and really the longer that your campaign fatigues and starts to drop down in ranking when it comes to Facebook's auction, so your cost per click starts to go up, and of course your CPA goes up, your return on ad spend decreases. That is a natural part of media buying on platforms like Facebook, Google, and YouTube. And yes, there are some things that we can do to combat that, like constantly launching new campaigns based off of insights from campaigns that we're currently running, hoping that those new campaigns can rank higher in the auction and start to produce numbers that look a little bit more reasonable for us. But within that one campaign that I was just discussing, that example that I was using, it is very natural that over time, your things are going to start to fatigue, and your return on ad spend is going to go down, and that your cost per acquisition or your cost per lead is going to climb. Very few times have I seen inside of a campaign, after about the week or 2 week mark, after I've done any troubleshooting or optimization that I feel that I can do, very rarely do I see after the 2 week mark that the CPA actually starts to decrease, or that the return on ad spend starts to increase. After that, your campaign is simply going to start to fatigue, and that's okay. That's when you should start to think about new campaigns that you can launch to help overcome this. But I just want to cover this misconception, because a lot of people would assume that they can scale from 1,000 leads a day to 5,000 leads a day, but maintain that $5 CPA or maintain that 5x return on ad spend. And yes, there are things you can do to help prolong that fatigue, and we'll talk about that today. But this is just natural. This is just how paid traffic platforms function, and it's nothing for you to get frustrated about or create negative energy about. It's just really how it works. And if you don't understand this, you're going to face a lot of frustration and probably think that you're doing things wrong along the process. And this is why a lot of you tell me, Molly, I don't know how to scale. I'm not scaling correctly. As soon as I start to increase my budget, or as soon as time passes, things just start to get more expensive, and that's okay. It's not just you, it's all of us. And John, I don't mean to put you on the spot right here, but I don't know if there's anything you want to touch on when it comes to this, because I know with a lot of clients, you guide people on, their metrics and how things are looking over time. And is this a concept that you kind of find yourself going back to, even with big brands that are spending, 10, 20, 30, plus $1,000 a day? This is still a scaling misconception that I know I'm constantly going back to.
Oh yeah, definitely putting me on the spot, but I will
Sorry.
say that no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Yeah, this is probably the biggest conversation I have, is sort of the idea of projecting out performance. And so people say, okay, I'm getting this return right now, and we're spending this much. So if I 10x my spend, we'll 10x our revenue, and it's going to mean this, that, and the other. And it's just a kind of a constant process of talking through and sort of explaining, like, as you spend more, you're reaching colder audiences. I know when we did this at Digital Marketer, it was really interesting and kind of stressful. I don't know if you remember, Molly, but we decided and we committed to being a bigger fish in a bigger pond, and that was like the actual like summary of the meeting we had. It was one of our really big ones where we said we're going to spend more. Um, and when we did it, the first month or so of the results were terrible. Like we just, we had been essentially like making a small return, I think, on every campaign we ran before we made this decision. And then we switched it, and suddenly it was just like, oh my gosh, like we went from, like 1.5 ROAS to like zero point 0.5 ROAS. And so we were losing money on all of these things on the front end. But this is when we kind of hit the big timeout button and like did some more strategic reviews of performance. And we went in and realized, like, whoa, once people have been in here for 90 days, the return on the ad spend that we spent on them goes to like 3 or 4 times. So we just kind of had to change our mindset around it, and eventually decided to accept a return on ad spend that was actually I mean, it's not negative because ROAS is never negative, but below break even, right? It was less than 100% return on ad spend. But the scaling we got from it was massive, right? It took us from, I think, a 6,000 person membership to like a 12,000 person membership for a little while. So gave us a really, really massive amount of scale, which helped digital marketer kind of cement its place in the pantheon of marketing education programs.
Yeah, totally. And John, I can't remember if this is a part of your data talk, and if it's not, I think this idea of projections and looking at these numbers, not just in the present day, but over time, and setting proper expectations for, hey, if you don't launch any new campaigns, this is what you can expect from this campaign in a month or 2 months or 3 months. Because guys, this media buying isn't set it and ignore it, right? Like sometimes you'll launch campaigns that for some reason are just evergreen monsters or heroes that just last for a really long time. But this is a constant process of launching new campaigns and overcoming fatigue. And this is really part of the process. So, John, we should definitely note to go in that a little bit deeper into that when we talk about data, because I think that's important, especially when you are like scale is also a function of where the business is. And John, that meeting that you were just discussing, that was so important because we were mostly selling a monthly continuity program. And so we had been selling the program long enough, I think for a year or so, to know what the real lifetime value looked like. And that's when we decided, okay, hey, we're willing now to not realize this revenue for a few months in order for the business to grow more in terms of volume of customers. And that was a really strategic move that ended up paying off. But you have to have proof of concept and know the numbers behind your campaigns before you can start to make decisions like that when it comes to scale. But really bigger, looking at the business from more of a bird's eye view, like John was just describing, that's also really important for scale and something that we should discuss in later weeks for sure, John. So,
Totally.
uh, did you have anything else, buddy?
I mean, that's the big stuff. I could talk about that for literally hours. That's what my whole TNT presentation this year is going to be about, but we will save that for later for now.
Okay, well, maybe we can give these guys a sneak peek of sneak peek of that. Okay, so the second misconception, and this kind of goes off what we were just talking about, is that with scale, you can just launch a campaign and start it works, and you can start duplicating it, and for years to come money's just going to keep rolling in, and I think that some people assume that because I don't know if there's marketing education going around that's teaching that or why that is the assumption, but it's so much more than that. And the most important part of scale and the companies that I've seen that are able to go to spending $50,000 a day profitably or whatever scale looks like for you are the ones that are, yes, they're good media buyers and they really understand the first 7 to 8 weeks of this course, but they also understand that they need to consistently be producing new offers, right? Whatever that is for their business. Like for our information business, we're constantly, producing content and webinars and lead magnets and even new products that we can sell, right? And of course, creatives, ad copy, targeting research, all of the things we talked about the first few weeks in the class, but we're also producing new offers and new products. And the same can be said for Boom. While we're all great media buyers that are working on Boom as a company, Ezra is also great about launching new products, right? He's not launching a new product every month, but about every quarter, we're launching a new product. We're launching new pre-sale articles. We're doing a new video shoot or photo shoot. We're trying to go after a new avatar. all in effort to scale the business, whether that means immediately scaling ad campaigns or whether that means producing new products that are going to increase lifetime value so that we can spend more to acquire a customer. Just the creation of these new assets and these new materials to work with, this has so much to do with scale that really has nothing to do with what's going on in the ad account at all. And John, I know back to the digital marketer example, that was key in that situation. It wasn't just a decision to spend more and to be willing to go a little bit longer before we realized that revenue. It was also a lot of work in the department of creating new lead magnets and webinars. And, I know we created a whole new avatar of agency owners and students that we wanted to go after. And we went deep into way different types of creatives and copy and targeting. Like, that is
Totally.
really where the scale came from. It wasn't that I learned a new button to click in Facebook, it was that we added YouTube and Google, and it was uh, uh, just so much more than what was happening in the ad accounts.
Yeah, an interesting note on that is just something that was working really well before we did this was we had pretty hyper targeted offers, right? So we were doing something that was designed specifically for media buyers, something that was specifically designed for content marketers or email writers, copywriters. But to go to a bigger pond to reach a broader audience, we had to create some offers that were a lot more generic marketing, generic business ones. And they didn't convert as well, right? I mean, if you send somebody who's a Facebook ad buyer that lives in Kentucky, to a landing page where it says, this is the one secret to successfully buying Facebook ads in Kentucky, that person is going to convert at like 90% on that page, right? It's so targeted, it's so perfect for them.
Yeah.
Um, but there's probably not more than 1,000 or so people in Kentucky doing that. So your ability to scale is actually pretty limited because your pool of audience is pretty small.
Yeah.
So, you change it to media buyers in the US, right? Suddenly the pool is much, much larger. You're going to be driving a lot more people, but it's not quite as hyper targeted. So they're going to convert at a slightly lower rate. So there's sort of a performance dip, not just in the hard facts of Facebook costs, right, where it's a little bit more expensive, but your page conversion rate drops a little bit, or your bounce rate goes up or whatever, or people's decision to actually buy drops a little bit. But you're getting the scale, right? There's just, I mean, and you're hitting this idea a lot, obviously, but I think it always boils down to the idea that you can't have both, right? You can't have massive, massive high returns in the short term and really, really big audiences. And so to scale, you have to be willing to sacrifice some of that front end stuff in order to reach so many more people.
Yeah, and to acquire more customers is kind of what we're saying, which in turn is going to grow your business so much more than a little bit more revenue in your pocket today, which is why that's a point I'm about to get to, John. I'm really glad you discussed that, but I wanted to touch on what you first said because sometimes for people, scale is opposite, right? So for the phone case company that I'm working with, that the case biodegrades, they're actually having the opposite opportunity where they got to the point they are right now through kind of generically marketing their product because it's very relevant. The environment is a hot topic right now. This was a very novel product, so it just caught on. We are now scaling by niching down. So targeting the outdoor winter sports industry, targeting vegans, right? Speaking specifically to moms and these different avatars, that's how we're scaling because they've pretty much burned out the broad, here's who we are, here's what we do, which they can get away with. And most people can't get away with starting there, right? And you kind of do the opposite, which is what you're discussing. So it can kind of go either way depending on where you started. But I just don't want you guys to have the misconception that all of this scale is just going to happen inside of ad accounts without creating new assets, without coming up with new avatars, new products, and really repeating the process of what we learned the first 7 or 8 weeks together. John, anything else you want to add there?
I mean, that's a really great point. And I will just add for context that at DM we had like we kind of had, fished out all the ponds. Man, I'm so stuck on this metaphor. We'd fished out all the ponds that were smaller, and that's why we went broad. But I absolutely love what you guys are doing with the phone case. That's such a cool idea. I mean, and something that I noticed talking to someone in team traffic was a similar thing, right? The idea that you can niche down and find new audiences. So there's scale in a lot of directions. It's just if you've overdone one thing, switching to the alternative option with a new offer, a new kind of audience is pretty impactful. So.
Totally. And John, I just want to really hit the nail on the head here. We already discussed it, but scale isn't just about return on ad spend. I mean, you all have a number, or you eventually will have a number in your brain of what is an acceptable return on ad spend for you for certain types of campaigns. And when you're scaling, that number is going to go down. But you have to realize that the volume of customers that you're acquiring, as long as you are breaking even or hitting the certain return on ad spend metrics that you're looking for, the volume of customers or leads that you are acquiring is so much more important than the return on ad spend, of course, is as long as you're breaking even. I don't want you guys to lose money if you're not willing to do so. But I tell you guys this all the time. I just still hear it in the market. Oh, I have a 10 return on ad spend. It's wonderful. It's scale. And then you look at what they're doing and it's like, great, you have a 10 return on ad spend, but you acquired 5 customers. Nothing against that. That's still a profitable campaign, but I would be much happier with 100 customers at a 2 return on ad spend. So don't get so caught up in campaigns that have a super high return on ad spend, but don't have a high volume of results, because the high volume of results, whether they're leads or customers for your business, that's where true scale comes from, as long as you're still cash flow positive. So scale isn't just about return on ad spend. And it's why when you guys see me in ad accounts, especially at the ad level, a lot of times I'm sorting ads or ad sets by number of results. And of course, I'm looking at the CPA or CPL and I'm looking at the return on ad spend, but I'm mainly looking at the volume of results generated because that's what's important to me. I need that volume for scale, whether it's number of people on my webinar, whether it's number of purchases, whatever I'm doing, that volume is more important than the return on ad spend. And it's something that we should definitely keep in mind. So just to touch a little bit on last week, so optimization is really about fixing a campaign. So what's not working about a campaign? How can we fix it? Scale is really about getting more results from something that's already working. And the optimization process has 2 parts, maintenance and troubleshooting. And I talked a lot about troubleshooting last week, but the optimization process really begins with the maintenance. So this is the day-to-day. Troubleshooting is more of a reaction. So I just launched a test campaign. It's been 3 to 5 days. I didn't meet my success metric. Let me go through this troubleshooting process that Molly taught me to come up with new ideas about how I can fix this current campaign or launch it more better. Right? It's troubleshooting, and that is very reactive troubleshooting. Or it's, okay, I've been running this campaign for a while, I've scaled it, it's no longer working, I'm not hitting my success metrics. Let's go back to my troubleshooting process and figure out, can I fix this, or do I need to launch a new campaign based off of my findings? So that's really the reactive part of troubleshooting. But there's also this maintenance part, I'm sorry, of optimization. There's also this maintenance part of optimization. And this is more of a routine. This is not reactive, right? This is more of a routine. And for me, this is what I do every morning, 5 to 6 days a week, probably now so more like 4 to 5 days a week, because all of the accounts that I run are more predictable. Like there's nothing that changes drastically day to day. But every day, almost 4 to 5 days a week, I'm logging in the morning. Mornings for me are the best time to check accounts and active campaigns and awake and with it. And I'm really going through a very simple process. This probably takes me 10, 20, maybe at most 30 minutes if I'm really having to dig deep into campaigns. But this maintenance goes back to remembering your campaign success metrics. So when you launch a campaign, you want to make sure that you have one success metric that judges whether that campaign is a success or a failure. For some of us, it's return on ad spend, cost per acquisition, cost per lead. You want to make sure that you have one metric that you're looking at to judge success or failure. If you don't, you'll have trouble making decisions about whether you should scale, whether you should turn it off, what you should do next. So that's why I recommend picking one number that really judges the success of this campaign. And I use this scale. You guys might have heard me talk about it before, but it's really simple. We call it green, yellow, red. And I'm looking through all of my campaigns and all of my ad sets, and this is my maintenance process. So if that ad set or that campaign is green, and for different, for you guys, this is going to mean different things. But essentially, this means that my success metric is in a place that tells me that I should scale. So for example, right now, I showed you guys this on Tuesday, and I'm going to show you more in today's session. This is an account that I just created for a docuseries about wine. So brand new ad account that I created last week. You can see that these are our first 4 campaigns. We're optimizing for leads. And right now, our goal, our success metric, is to keep these leads under $5 a piece. That is what we know is going to be profitable for us, and where we need to be when it comes to profitability in this funnel. So if I know that I need to keep this under $5, green for me, right, scale would probably be anything under $4 or anything under $3.75 would be something that I would scale. Same thing with Ezra. His normal CPA goal is about 60 bucks. So anything under $45, any ad set or campaign, depending on how it's been set up, I'll talk about that here in a bit, that is in the green. That is good to scale. And the reason that I say that is once I get over the $4 mark, I know that this campaign over time is going to fatigue. So if it's over $4, by increasing the budget or whatever I'm going to do to scale, as we'll talk about later, it's probably going to quickly push this over to the $5 mark, and I'm not going to get the volume of results that I want. So, a good way to look at this is, if you have like 20 to 30% wiggle room left in your cost per lead or cost per acquisition or return on ad spend, before you hit that number that you need for your success metric or that you set as your goal, you're really in the green there, and you should increase your budget. So if something's green, so for me, it would be me logging in here. For these campaigns, I've got budget set at the campaign level. So here, this isn't in the yellow, right? This is over $4. This definitely, or I'm sorry, this isn't in the green. This is more in the yellow, as I'll talk about in a minute. This is over $5, so it's more in the red. But this is a campaign that I just launched 2 days ago. So this cost per lead is coming down drastically every day. Yesterday it was $10. So I'm not doing anything with this campaign yet. This is new. Both of these campaigns have budgets at the ad set level. So I would actually go in at the ad set level and start to make decisions. So if your budget is set at the campaign level, which means you're using CBO, campaign budget optimization, you want to make decisions when it comes to optimization or scale about that campaign at the campaign level, because that is how Facebook is optimizing, right? So for these 2 campaigns, I would simply be looking at this number here, not the ad level, not the ad set level. I would be looking here in my daily maintenance to make these decisions. Because these budgets are set at the ad set level, I'm going to be making the decisions here at the ad set level. So I would go through, you can see this one's already at 650 bucks a day. That's because this cost per result has stayed below the $4 mark. I've increased this budget a few times now, right? And as you see on this slide, I recommend increasing a budget of an ad set or campaign that's green about 50% every 3 to 5 days. This will change depending on the longevity ability of the campaign. So if you were running a campaign that could run for months that doesn't have an end date, you might only want to increase the budget every 7 days, maybe 10 days, or even 14 days, because we know that when we increase the budget, it's naturally going to decrease return on ad spend. It's naturally going to increase CPA. So by only feeding Facebook that budget, every so often versus every 3 to 5 days, it won't jack up that CPA or lower that return on ad spend as quickly. Or if you're in a mode like I am here, where I only have a few more days to run these ads because we're in the middle of the launch, then I might increase the budget every 2 to 3 days because I'm a bit more aggressive. But all of these budgets, and I'll talk more about vertical scaling, which is basically what I'm covering here, but in a bit. But I started all of these budgets at $100, and you can see that there's one here. After 3 days, this one didn't make the cut, so this one got turned off. But the rest of these, depending on how they've functioned here and whether they've been in the green or the yellow or the red, have had their budgets drastically increased, or some of them have stayed a bit smaller. So anything that's in the green that has about 20 to 30% of wiggle room left when it comes to return on ad spend or cost per lead or cost per acquisition, every 3, 5, maybe 7, 10, or 14, depending on the longevity aspiration of the campaign, you will go in and scale those budgets. So keep in mind, I am logging in every morning just to look at these campaigns and to make sure everything looks okay. And I note on a notepad which ad sets I increase in budget when, so I know how many days it's been since I increased it. And then I just note which of them are still in the green area and which of them need to be increased on which day. And you might find that some of them, campaigns or ad sets, are more in the yellow. So they haven't exceeded your success metric, but they're in that space where they've got 20 to 30% of wiggle room there. If you increase the budget, it's probably going to knock them out of the park. So we just want to leave them as is and let them ride off into the sunset, right? Anything that's yellow should be left alone, and anything red should be turned off. So I actually haven't done this today yet. So this is a great exercise. I'm actually going to sort this by cost per result now. So you can see this one's already been turned off. This one needs to be turned off. It fell out of the zone here. And this one also needs to be turned off because it exceeded our $5 mark. This one's only a little bit out, so I'm going to keep it and see what it looks like tomorrow. The rest of these, between $5 and $4, these are all yellow. So we'll leave these as be. And all of these I increased yesterday pretty significantly in budget. So I'm actually going to leave those. So really simple. The maintenance part of this just looks like logging in here once a day and looking at all of your campaigns, whether at the ad set level or the campaign level, like I just discussed, and making your decisions based off of this green-yellow framework that I've given to you, and based off of the success metric that best reflects your campaigns. So make these decisions based off of where you've set your budget. And I said, let me show you. I've already showed you. And then, of course, the second aspect of optimization is troubleshooting. We covered that last week, what to do if it's just not working. Do not panic. We must dissect the campaign and figure out why it's not working. And I went into great detail about that last week so that you can improve that aspect of the campaign. and not completely start from scratch, because that's a huge mistake I see people making. They launch a campaign, they run it for 3 to 5 days, it doesn't work, and they completely start from scratch. Don't do that. Use the troubleshooting process that I taught you last week. Don't completely start from scratch, because even though it was a failure in terms of not meeting your success metrics, you at least bought a bunch of data that should, if you're willing to dissect it, give you some very informed next steps that will help you set up set up a new campaign that's going to perform a bit better than your last. So when should you troubleshoot? When you're not hitting your success metric. And what should you do if you are hitting your success metric, right? That's really when we get to scale. And there are 3 ways to scale. So you can see that we're kind of breaking this into 3 parts. The first part is the building of the campaign, the building of the campaigns as a part of your traffic system. And we spent the first 7 to 8 weeks of the class on that. And if we don't nail those steps, we're never going to get to scaling. It's why those are so important. We launched the campaign. We then move to the optimization and troubleshooting portion. Or if everything looks great right off the bat, like it did with the wine campaigns that I showed you, it's time for scale. And there are really 3 different ways to scale as a media buyer. The first is vertical, and this is what I was discussing earlier about increasing your budgets. This one's super easy. You just have to play nice with Facebook's algorithm. So most people don't realize that it's not wise to go from spending $100 a day to $200 a day the next day, right? Or especially $100 a day to $500 a day, or $1,000 a day the next day. That's why I recommend 50% increase in budget every 3 to 5 days, because this gives Facebook the budget. It's kind of like slowly feeding a baby, right? That's kind of how this is. You want to slowly feed Facebook's algorithm budget over time so that you don't see a really fast increase in your CPA or a really stark decrease in your return on ad spend. A lot of that is happening because we're increasing the budget too quickly. And the reason that happens is that Facebook's currently going through an optimization process for your campaign that's based off of the budget you're spending and the audience that you're targeting. If you 10x that tomorrow, it forces Facebook to show your ads, and therefore, because they're needing to spend 10 times more money than they did yesterday, to a bunch of people that they're not ready to show the ads to yet, because they're just not as qualified as the audiences that they've been showing the ads to in the past that have been converting well. So you're forcing Facebook's optimization process to essentially go outside of its comfort zone too quickly. And that's why you see that CPA jump. So when you're vertically scaling, which is very simple, very fast, it's easy to go in and increase those budgets at the ad set level or the campaign level, make sure that you do it very slowly. The only time that I would increase budgets quickly, like maybe double or triple budgets day over day, is if you were in the middle of a launch and you had only a very limited amount of time to spend, and reach is more important than return on ad spend or CPA. That's the only time that I have just ranked it up and maybe tripled or quadrupled budgets day after day. But if something's working, right, and you want more of it and you're looking to scale, vertical scaling and increasing the budget is the first place that I go. And as we discussed, the speed of which you scale that budget really depends on the longevity intention of the campaign. And that's how you should judge how often and by how much you should be increasing those budgets. So for example, here inside of Wine Revealed, as you guys see, this one did really well. So luckily, I only had initially 1 ad set that I had to turn off, and then 2 ad sets here that we just turned off together. But when I first logged in here after 3 to 5 days, there's 16 ad sets. This one got turned off. All 15 of them I increased to $150 because they started at $100. It's 3 days later. They all were within my green standard, right? They were all under $4. I think they were all under $2.50 even. So I was able to scale them all by $50. They all were increased to $1.50. 2 to 3 days later, logged back in, and I don't think any of them are at $1 or 150 here. Okay, so logged back in, everything was looking good. They were bumped up again by another $50. Okay, great. Two, I think, days later, because again, we're in the middle of the launch, so this is being squished to a shorter amount of time. Log in, everything that's meeting the success metric and is green was bumped up. This time I went $100. It's why you see these at 250. I went from 150 to 250 because we're getting closer to this launch date. So instead of going to like 200 or 210, I went a little bit more aggressive here. And then you started to see that there were ad sets that fell off. So these are still active. They're yellow. They're still running. They're still working, but they weren't scaled as much as, for example, this $750 a day one, because this one has worked so incredibly well. And you'll see that that is why this one has the highest volume of results. It might not have the lowest cost per result, but it's generated a great portion of the amount of leads. And so this is a really great ad set. At the CBO level, it's even easier. I'm not looking at the ad set level. The CBO level, which is where you're going to be doing most of your scaling, it's just one number that you have to increase, just one budget that you have to bump up, which makes it a lot easier for us. And these two have been bumped up. This one's been bumped up once already, and this one's been bumped up 3 times already. And again, with just one change of the numbers. So vertical scaling is the easiest that's out there. Of course, it's not limitless. So, these campaigns or these ad sets, all of them will eventually fatigue. There will be a time where all of them exceed the $5 mark if the launch doesn't end by then. And at that point, I will have some new campaigns launch. Well, I already even do, which we'll talk about a little later. These were just test campaigns that happened to work, so I just scaled them. But these will eventually fatigue, and that's okay. I'm really happy with how well they've done so far. And even though they're built like test campaigns, I'm still scaling them, even though budgets are at the ad set level, because they're working. And why would I stop something that's working? So the second type of scaling, and I really believe these types of scaling get more significant as we go. The vertical scaling is pretty, that's just common sense. And most people, when they want to scale campaigns, I mean, most people think that is what scale is. They think that there's some trick to increasing budgets that they're missing, but they're really not. It's just, I mean, I guess there are tips and tricks when it comes to how often you scale and by how much, and nuances there, but there's nothing that you guys are missing when it comes to scale and increasing budgets. It just eventually fatigues because there's only so many times Facebook can show those ads to that audience that you're targeting. It is natural that what you are doing will fatigue and that it will not work forever. And that's okay. That is why we have the second type of scaling, which is called horizontal scaling, which is something that I came up with a few years ago. And horizontal scaling is kind of opposite to vertical scaling. It's about taking what's working. So what's working for Wine Revealed is targeting the wine market. I mean, this is definitely a market-centric business. There aren't really avatars here. So targeting the wine market, these ads are working. So the offer's working, the copy's working. I mean, everything's working pretty well here. So, and that's where you are when you're ready to scale. Things are working. So it's about taking those assets the ads, especially, and showing them to more people, right, through new targeting. So, I've got these initial test campaigns um, for this docuseries, and I've got 16 ad sets here that are all various interests in the wine market. I think I showed you guys different types of wines, different wineries, a bunch of different types of interests. But I hadn't tried no targeting yet. I hadn't tried lookalikes. There are lots of interests I haven't used yet. So now, instead of just increasing the budgets and vertically scaling what's working, another way for me to scale is horizontally. So taking the post IDs of those ads and what's already working and either creating new ad sets or creating new campaigns that target new targeting options that will allow me to reach more people in my market that I haven't reached yet, based off of the interests and what I'm targeting right now, that will allow me to scale. And this is honestly one of my favorite ways to scale and the most underrated way to scale. So what other targeting options can I use to find this audience or this avatar? And this is where I go back to the Google Doc with all of the interests that I haven't used yet. This is when I start to think about new lookalike interests that I can target. This is when I start to look at, hey, do I have about 1,000 of pixel events or pixel fires on my purchase or on my lead? Maybe can I test an ad set that's targeting no one at all? Horizontal targeting is all about taking what's working in terms of the offer and the ads that are working, and now just scaling by showing to more people. So this is a little exercise that we did with Boom last year to look at their 2018 spend and say, did you use all of the targeting options available to you? Yes, we targeted our site visitors, email list, buyers, all of our video viewers, our page, fans, Instagram and Facebook engagers, lookalike audiences. But no, Boom didn't use any interest targeting at all in 2018. Well, guess where most of their scale came from this year in 2019? It came from us using the same ads and same offers that they used in 2018, but just tons of new interests that allowed us to reach more of their audience that they had never reached before, because they just hadn't found them through the targeting that they were using. So this setup will look different, again, depending on whether your campaigns are with budgets at the ad set level, or whether you're using CBO with campaigns, budgets at the campaign level. But the thought process is the same. So there are really two ways you can do this. If you have budgets set at the ad set level, like you see here, for horizontal scaling, you can simply take the post IDs of the ads that you're already using and create new ad sets with new targeting using those same post IDs. And the reason you can do that is because when you have budget set at the ad set level, you can add new ad sets into those campaigns without throwing off the optimization of the campaign. Now, if you have budgets at the campaign level, you cannot add new ad sets into the campaign without throwing off the optimization and the overall success of the full campaign. So if your budgets are at the campaign level currently, and you want more scale, you want to do more horizontal scaling, you need to create new campaigns using CBO. Really, anytime you want to create a campaign for scale, guys, I recommend using CBO. So even though these two test campaigns, they were built for testing and their budgets are at the ad set level, when it was time for scale and after I had proof of concept, I actually went ahead and just started creating new campaigns that were CBO campaigns for scale. I could have added new ad sets at the ad set level here, but CBO campaigns are really best for scale. So you can see what I did. I took the same ads and I created 8 brand new ad sets. And these were interests that I had not used before. So different interests, from my list that I hadn't initially used, and also some lookalike audiences. So I layered in some lookalike, some of these ad sets, about 2 to 3 of these ad sets are just targeting lookalikes of people who opted in, lookalikes of people that visited our website, lookalikes of page engagers. But most of these are interests that I hadn't used previously. So here are almost 2,000 new leads that I've generated, for this particular launch, that are just from a campaign that was built for scale, right? So this one was launched a few days after these, so it's got less here in terms of results, but it will quickly be as significant as these guys. And especially as this one starts to fatigue, hopefully this campaign stays around a little bit longer for scale. Something else that I like to do when I'm scaling, if possible, again, I've got the post IDs of the ads here inside of these ad sets of the ads that were already working. If I wanted this to work more, if this was more of an evergreen campaign and not a launch that I knew was going to be over quickly, I might even think about adding 2 or 3 new ads to this campaign that are completely fresh copy and creative that I haven't used before. That can also really help to keep things fresh, especially if there's overlap between your new campaign that's built for scale and possibly your old test campaign that's still running. So I built this CBO campaign for scale. There are a few more ad sets in here that I recommend to you guys. I say keep it between 3 to 5, but I just couldn't decide. And you notice that I'm paying for that because there are 3 ad sets that haven't even made it out of learning. And of course, Facebook's giving most of the reach to just these top 3. So something else that I could do for scale that I'll probably do next week, or I'm sorry, tomorrow, and that you'll learn more about in the CBO training that we're also bonusing in here, is I could simply, since Facebook's not really giving these much reach anymore, I could take these bottom campaigns and turn these into their own CBO campaigns. It won't really compete because Facebook's not spending at these ad sets anymore. And that would allow me to tell Facebook, okay, please go focus over here on these ad sets that you've quit giving reach to, right? Even though they had a good cost per lead. Another scale campaign that I've built, and this one's really simple. This was just launched a few days ago, and the cost per lead is still going down. So you can see it was launched 2 days ago, and right out of the gate, the cost per lead was, let's see here. Okay, so when I first looked, it was around like 18 bucks. It went down to 10. Then we're at 691 when Facebook started recording. Now it looks like today we're down to 452. So this is actually looking really good, but it shows you why it takes a few days. But now that I've generated a few thousand events on this pixel, I decided to set up a CBO campaign with one ad set that's just targeting no one, right? So just everybody in the US and Canada within my age range. And the reason I'm able to do that is because Facebook really knows what my audience looks like based off of my pixel. And you'll see that in most of Ezra's campaigns, we're in Boom's campaign here, you can see that in most of his campaigns that are built for scale, he has at least one ad set. So you can see this one here, I'm sure. Oh no, this one is some interest targeting. Okay, awesome, love it. It looks like this one is some lookalikes together here to get a larger audience size for scale. You can see, okay, this one. Nope, here we've got some interests. So I'm not sure if they're going to have one in here, but a lot of times Boom is running an ad set or a campaign that's just open targeting because their pixel has so much data. So 2 things to note about that. You definitely need to give it a few days because it's going to take time for Facebook to find those people. And you also don't just want to rely on this for scale because it tends to produce a low volume of results. Even though I'm spending $750 a day, it's not actually spending that amount. Facebook hasn't been able to find that amount of people that they feel would opt in for this. So they're not even spending $750 a day. So this can be a good strategy, but not the only one that you should rely on when it comes to horizontal scaling, because you just won't get that volume of results that you're looking for. So I was lucky here. Both of my test campaigns worked. And I was able to scale those. I've also been able to create a new CBO campaign that's worked great, and another new CBO campaign that's worked really great or that's worked okay. The CPL's coming down, and hopefully we'll be able to boost the volume of results there soon. But this second type of targeting is all about horizontal targeting. How can we take what's worked, right? The same post IDs, maybe with a few new ads if you want to, but at least using those post IDs and just setting up new ad sets or new campaigns to target interests, lookalikes, or even to try no targeting to really allow us that scale, especially in terms of volume of results. And really quick, guys, I do not recommend duplicating campaigns for scale. That's something that a lot of people teach. And maybe if you're running a 3-day flash sale and it really doesn't matter if you're just directly competing against yourself, it might work. But the act of just taking a campaign that's already working and duplicating it 4 times and not changing anything, like throughout these campaigns, I've changed the targeting to allow that horizontal scale. The act of just duplicating, it's just going to increase costs among all of your campaigns, and it's not an efficient way to scale. So I just wanted to address that because I know that question's probably come through. And then,
Molly, real quick,
yeah,
before you dive into this next one, can I ask you just a couple questions?
of course.
Cool. So David was wondering, when you're talking about the CBO campaign, are you using new interests that are different from the old ones, or are you just reusing the same
Yes.
interest groups?
No, new. So that's exactly what I was just saying, guys. So whenever I'm building new scale campaigns, they're always using new interests that I'm not already targeting in an active ad campaign. Just
Perfect.
more. That's why during the targeting research, I tell you to go deep so that you have a bunch of targeting options, because you'll want more that you can use later when you're in scale mode.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. And then I know this is probably a it depends question, but Eliza was wondering if you had a sense of how quickly a test campaign will fatigue.
Well, it really depends because fatigue is a function of budget and audience size. Um, and, really that's measured by frequency. I'm getting nerdy, but um, just to help my brain explain this to you. So, fatigue really happens when the audience that you are targeting is saturated. Facebook just can't find as many people to take the action that you're requesting at the cost that you're looking for. So we overcome that by finding new audiences, by creating new offers for our current audiences. So fatigue will depend on who you're targeting, how many people you're targeting, and how quickly you're spending your money. Like for this, these have been running about a week now, I think, 10 days. This is fatiguing much quicker than it would have if I would have only scaled the budgets once a week. But I'm in the middle of the launch, and so I need these results quickly. If this was an evergreen campaign that I wanted to last longer and stay under my success metric, then I wouldn't have increased the budget so quickly, and that would have caused me to fatigue a bit slower.
Perfect. That's a great answer. And that is exactly what we needed. So that's it. That's all the outstanding questions. Sorry to interrupt, but feel free to dive into exponential scaling.
No problem at all. So this is my favorite and the most significant because you can get a long, long way, guys, with vertical and horizontal scaling. I mean, I can tell you that for certain just from Boom's cold traffic. I mean, most of Boom's cold traffic is still the same as it was a year ago or 2 years ago. It's, pretty much the same pre-sale article, really similar ads, but we're constantly coming up with new audiences, right? We're constantly finding new hooks and new ways to position things. But exponential scale is really where significant scale. And I think it's what Boom has done more so this year, John. And I think it's what they do well from a product standpoint. And I think it's what's going to move them even further in 2020. And exponential scale is kind of about everything outside of the tactical stuff inside of the ad account. So, for example, is there a way for you to expand the locations in which you sell your product or just where you're targeting? So, John, I know a big client of ours last year, we scaled because we added like 2 new countries that we started targeting because we started out with the US, it worked well. And we were able to like double our ad spend just because we started targeting the US, Canada, and a few other countries. Same thing with the phone case company. They just really started, and the same thing with Boom this year too. A big part of scale has come from selling products in the EU and being able to sell to that market. So I know this doesn't apply to all of you, but is there a way that you can expand your targeting just to reach people who live in a broader geographical area? Because that is a way to very much exponentially scale without really making any changes or having to do a lot of work in your business. Another one that's huge, guys, is avatars, especially for you guys with product-centric businesses. I mean, with Panda Planner, once I nailed down 2 avatars or even one and had it working, it's like, great, how can I now take this same process, these same types of campaigns that are working for me, and duplicate this, reposition this to a new avatar for scale? Same thing's happening with the phone case company right now. It's like, cool, the environmental avatar, we've got that down. Now let's exponentially scale by specifically speaking to the outdoors market, specifically speaking to vegans, because that specificity and product to market match is sometimes what you need to really scale. So especially those of you with product centric businesses, okay, what other campaigns can you set up to position your product or service or call to action to a completely new avatar? And John, even for market centric businesses like Digital Marketer, that's what we did for scale in a big way. It's like, cool, we've got the avid digital marketer down. Now, how can we create campaigns and avatars for agency owners and people that work for someone else but are a digital marketer, and freelancers? And how can we make ourselves more broadly applicable to these people to truly scale? That's where a huge part of our scale is going to come from. And this is, back to the Panda Planner example. We have the spiritual audience, moms, dads, entrepreneurs, architects. Not everything worked and made it out of testing mode, but that is really how we scaled in terms of volume of results. This is really huge too. And this is more about, okay, once a test campaign fatigues, so let's say, we've got these 2 campaigns, which both have ad sets within them that are targeting cold audiences. What happens once both of these fatigue? Well, something that we could do is duplicate them and target those same audiences with completely new ads, because those ads that we've currently been using here have obviously fatigued. So once these campaigns both go over $5, something I could do is duplicate both of them and just delete all of the ads from them right now, and replace them with fresh ads that have completely different hooks, right? And completely different reasons for them to take action. And a reason that I do this and that it works so well is, number one, most of these people have already seen ads from you because you've targeted them before. But maybe they just didn't resonate with the hook that you were using before, or the hook of the ad that they saw. And if they see brand new ads with maybe new creatives that might catch their attention where the other ones didn't, or a completely new hook that's just much more relevant to them than the ads that they previously saw, that is where a lot of scale can come from, especially after campaigns that you're running currently that you're relying on start to fatigue. This is a great way to continue to still communicate from that audience to that audience, and essentially refresh what has already fatigued. And this really involves, I mean, sometimes, guys, it's about creating new hooks and therefore new creative and copy every 4 to 30, 60 days. It depends on the volume of traffic that you're running. There's some brands that are running a low volume of traffic that might only need to create fresh campaigns every 2, 3, 4 months because things just don't fatigue that quickly. They don't need to be scaled that much. But there are some companies like Boom where we're scaling so quickly and running at such a high volume, and campaigns are fatiguing so quickly that new stuff needs to be launched every week. And that's just part of the process. And you will start to notice the cadence of how quickly your campaigns fatigue based off how quickly you're scaling them. And therefore, that is really the cadence you should follow in terms of how often you should be creating new ad creative and new copy to replace those campaigns that have fatigued. So, exponential scaling is not just about opening up to new locations or creating new hooks. It's also the creation of new creative and copy to reflect those new hooks that we're trying to see if these audiences will resonate with. I discussed this at the beginning, and this is something that Ezra is really strong about with Boom, but the introduction of new products, that's something that John and I have worked a lot on. We've got Train My Traffic Person, but we've also launched Team Traffic, and we've got Smart Traffic Live. The reason that we're launching new products is we want to further serve you guys, and we love it. But we also know that will increase the customer value, and that we're now launching products at different price points that are going to help people at every step in the customer journey. So simply by creating new products, Boom, again, is great at this. By just creating new products, it can help you not only further monetize existing customers, which creates an opportunity for very profitable ad campaigns, but it also gives you new products that might work to cold traffic or might work to cold audiences that you've tried to reach before that just didn't resonate with the offer or the product that you were trying to sell. So by creating new products, whether it's front end or even more expensive back end products, by releasing new products, at least once a year, that's going to give you something fresh to talk about and really allows for that exponential scale. And then last but not least, John, is okay, something's working, right? It's working on Facebook. This offer is resonating, this hook, this copy or creative. If people here are liking it, those humans are probably on other traffic platforms, or people like those humans are probably on other traffic platforms like YouTube or Google. So how can we take what we're doing here and horizontally scale, exponentially scale over to these other traffic platforms? And that's going to be a lot of what our trainings about Google and YouTube are. Once you have something working on Facebook, how can you scale it out to these other traffic platforms to really get that exponential scale? If it's working on one, yes, it will need to be tweaked because every traffic platform works differently, and consumers use traffic platforms differently. So it will need to be tweaked. You can't just take a Facebook campaign and plop it into Google. But there is a high likelihood that if positioned in the correct way and if tweaked in the correct way, what you are doing in theory on Facebook is going to work on these other traffic platforms that will allow you to reach parts of your market that you just haven't been able to reach on Facebook. Maybe they just haven't identified as a part of your market on Facebook. Maybe they just don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. Maybe they're spending a lot of time on YouTube or on another traffic platform. So another way to exponentially scale is by finding other traffic platforms that will allow you to reach this audience. So the three big ways to scale, guys. First is vertical, increase in the budget. Second is horizontal, finding more people that are a part of your market on the traffic platform that you're using, and using interests and lookalikes and open audiences that you haven't used before for horizontal scale. And then third is exponential, which is everything that I just covered in the last 5 to 10 minutes. As I did say at the beginning of this training, guys, below this module, there will be a tactical CBO training with my friend Nehal about how he scales really in an intense way. I don't scale as rapidly as he does. I follow the parameters that I gave you guys. But if you are looking for daily scaling, more day to day, like almost day trading like scaling, if you want to learn about automated rules, this is a very tactical session that you guys should watch. And then next Tuesday, we'll also be adding a more in-depth 60-minute training that's all about CBO, and that's going to talk more even in depth about how to tactically scale. So I covered the 3 types of scaling, talked a bit about how this works. John, I'm happy to ask questions, and then remember those other 2 modules will go even more in depth when it comes to the tactics, because this is, although easy and exciting, a pretty in-depth topic. And remember, this is also very reactive, very much like troubleshooting. When someone asks me, Molly, how do I scale? My first question is, or my first statement is, it depends. And then I start to ask them about their current state of affairs. What does your campaign look like? Where are you? And then we start to identify places that they can optimize and areas where they should start scaling. So hopefully this is helpful. I always love chatting about this topic. And John, I'm happy to take a question or 2. My voice is going a little bit, but I'm happy to take a question or 2 if we have them.
Sure. We actually only have one right now. I'm sure another 2 or 3 will roll in, but Neil said, when you were scaling to the EU, how did you tackle the language barrier?
We really didn't necessarily. We just ran ads in English. I guess we could create campaigns by country and run ads in the native language. That's just not what we're looking to do right now. So we pretty much just took the same ads we had and then just started, or really it was pretty much new campaigns that we were setting up. We just started adding Europe as an area that we wanted to target with cold traffic.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think that's a good strategy in general, is like when you want to scale, but you're not ready to add such a additional level of complexity, just going out to the other English language countries is smart. It is sometimes worth looking at regional, I guess, like turns of phrase, because some things like mean totally different things in different countries. So just double check for your product that whatever language you're using isn't offensive in somebody else's vernacular. Like in Australia, the thumbs up I think is like a middle finger in the US. So
Totally.
but yeah, I think that's really the only one I've seen. This was a really, really awesome session. I was talking to Molly about this earlier, and everything else we've done has been like so much like laying the foundation. And I mean, that is, you can't do this without laying the foundation, but it's never that exciting to dig the hole and pour the cement. But man, when you start putting those girder beams up and just like building the skyscraper up, it feels so good. So it's always really fun to start talking about the scaling stuff. And these are all really, really awesome proven techniques. And going to other traffic platforms is really great, but I really think there's so much additional opportunity on Facebook that you guys will be able to scale there for at least the next year and still not even need to transition once you get going on it. So
Yep, totally. And a lot of scale will come down to the metrics that we talked about in your data session, John, and figuring out where can I scale to, like what does profitability look like, and we'll, help you figure that out. But when you're thinking about scaling, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's okay, it's working. Let's increase the spin to further saturate the audience that it's working to. Okay, step two, let's find more audiences, most like the ones that are working. Step three, let's think bigger. Let's exponentially scale. Let's create new offers, new products, new avatars, new traffic platforms. And I think that third piece is truly how businesses scale.